What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be letting you know which mobility item I think is best in Fortnite Chapter 5 since the addition of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mythics. If you enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below which mobility item is your favorite in Chapter 5 right now. So, a lot of people kind of wonder right now which is the best because we have a lot of options. We have the Grapple Blade, we have the 4 Turtle Mythics, and then we also have the Shockwave grenades. For starters, I'm just going to eliminate the Grapple Blade. I have never been the biggest fan of this item. Before the update, I was preferring Shockwaves to it. And with the update, I think the comparison is really between the Shockwaves and the Turtle Mythics. I don't really care for the Grapple Blade. Like I said, I was never the biggest fan of it. My opinion of it is probably lower than others because I never really took the time to get used to it. But even then, I just felt like Shockwaves were much better fighting mobility, and I wasn't that concerned about the fact that the Grapple Blade was better for traveling around the map because I use cars so much. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to be talking mostly about the Shockwaves and the Turtle Mythics. If you like the Grapple Blade, that's fine. Use what you enjoy, but I think most people are probably going to prefer one of the other mobility items. So between the Shockwaves and the Turtle Mythics, I think you can really have an argument for one or the other. I don't think there's just a clear-cut, obvious answer. How far you go off a single use, I think, is pretty comparable, but probably slightly in the Shockwave's advantage. But when you chain dashes and jumps with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Mythics, I think these Mythics are just as good, and they are unlimited, whereas Shockwaves are a consumable, so when it's gone, it's gone once you use it, and you can only carry 6 in a single stack, whereas like the Turtle Mythic, you use a dash, and then it goes on cooldown for, I think, 15 seconds or 10 seconds, and then you get another one back, and so while it isn't unlimited in the sense that you can just spam it constantly without thinking about it, it's unlimited in the sense that like when you find it, you have your mobility for the game. Whereas like Shockwaves, you kind of always have to be concerned about, is it worth using it here, or I need to find more after using it here. And this was already a downside when comparing the Shockwaves to the Grapple Blade. That was like the main advantage the Grapple Blade has, was that it was unlimited. But I thought the mobility of Shockwaves was just that much better in a fight than the mobility of the Grapple Blade in a fight. So the fact that the Grapple Blade was unlimited didn't really give it enough like bonus points to like push it over the edge for me. Whereas like with the Turtle Mythics and the Shockwaves, I feel like already being like pretty comparable to one another as far as mobility goes. So the fact that the Turtle Mythics are unlimited, I think, is enough to kind of like bump it over the edge because you have a great mobility option that's really good and it regenerates over time. If you just wanted to go super far off a single use, like I said, Shockwaves are better, but for how you use your mobility to like reposition in fights or push people in fights, I feel like the Turtle Mythics are almost just as good as the Shockwaves. I used this clip in a video yesterday, but I'm still going to use it again just because I think it kind of explains this or shows this well. Just every time I get into a fight here, or every time I get an elimination and get third-partied, I just immediately katana dash to another rooftop or to the side and just like reset that fight without ever thinking about it, because the fact that these Turtle Mythics are unlimited. Whereas like with Shockwaves, I might have to think about like, is it worth actually using one here, or can I just kind of stay where I am and kind of try to deal with a third party that way? And both can work out fine, but the fact that you can just reposition in a fight without ever thinking about it, without ever having to second guess it with these Turtle Mythics, I think makes it a lot better, and it makes it to where you get yourself, I feel like, in less bad situations. Obviously, if you're using it too much and spamming it too often, you're going to have it go on cooldown. But, when we're talking about mobility in between fights, it wasn't like I was just full spamming my katana uses and then getting caught off guard with none. I kept a few. I was like usually keeping it decently recharged. That way I would have the ability to reset fights. And the way the fights played out around these train station, I think was so much easier because I had these Turtle Mythics. And if I had Shockwaves, I think it would have been much harder to just reset those fights because it's harder to go like a little bit with the Shockwaves, but also I potentially run out or potentially just don't even use it because I'm concerned about using it and needing it later. I think the freedom of use with the Turtle Mythics is super nice. The Shockwaves do have some added utility though, like being able to break structures is nice if you're caught in a house, or if you have somebody camping in a house, you could Shockwave yourself through the wall. You can Shockwave people out from behind cover if you know where they are and they aren't doing anything. You can Shockwave people out of bushes. There is like a lot of like added utility and like tricks that you can do with Shockwaves, but I think as far as just mobility in a fight goes, the Turtle Mythic is just as good and it's unlimited. And for me, I think the gap between Shockwaves and Turtle Mythics isn't enough for me to want to use Shockwaves when there's something that I think is just as good that's unlimited. So I think the Turtle Mythic is the best mobility item in the game right now. And I think for a lot of people, you're probably going to agree with that. I think the vast majority of players are probably going to prefer using these Turtle Mythics while they're in the game. And not only are they a great option for mobility that's unlimited, but it's also the easiest to use, I think, and the easiest to find, because it can be found in the turtle supply drops, which will just spawn throughout the course of the game, and they'll be marked on your map, so you can go ahead and open the drop and get them, no big deal. And then there's also turtle vending machines around the map, and so you may have to fight people at the drops. It's not easy in that sense. There might be a challenge in terms of fighting another player for the drop and then getting it, but it's easy in the sense that, like, if you don't have mobility and you want to have mobility, there is like a clear-cut answer to what you should do in that situation, you know? Whereas like if you want to use shockwaves and you don't have any, you're kind of just looting, hoping that you eventually get it and then can start like playing the game how you want to play, you know? So I think that's another kind of advantage in the Turtles camp, is just that it's much easier to get these items, or it's much easier to at least like have an actionable plan to get these items if you don't already have one, whereas both Shockwaves and the Grapple Blade is just RNG chance. There are like NPCs that sell Shockwaves on the map, but it's for 250 gold for 2, whereas the Turtle Mythic is 300 gold for 1 at the Turtle vending machine, so it's just like much more cost efficient as well, I think. And then I think the Turtle Mythics are also far and away the easiest to use. You just look at the direction you want to go, and then you hit the dash button. There is like kind of some of a learning curve or like trick to learning. It's like how high you have to look. How high you look up will affect the arc at which your character travels. So if you're looking just straight ahead, you'll go forward, but you won't go very far forward because you're not going to get much air. But if you look at like an angle, you'll go pretty far because your character is going to get, you know, some air. If you look too far up, like if you just look straight up, your character will go mostly just straight up, and you won't actually travel very far as far as like your character's position from where you started after you land. So there is a bit of a learning curve in terms of like how high do I want to look up for this situation. But once you get that down, I think these Turtle Mythics are very easy to use, and you can also chain dashes like I talked about before. You can dash and maybe you look straight up for 1 to get high, and then your next dash is from the like height of your initial dash. You just go forward to get pretty far, or you just kind of look a decent amount up and then dash forward 3 times. You can also do like somewhat of a double jump flip in between dashes. If you just if you dash and then hit your jump button, you'll do that flip, and you can chain it. So you can dash, do a flip, dash again, do a flip, and then, you know, keep doing that. The flip does consume some of your stamina though, so you might run out of stamina and not be able to flip in certain situations. But I think, you know, that's kind of the learning curve of the Turtle Mythic, is how high do I want to look up based on how far I want to go, and then, you know, whether or not you're going to chain dashes or land in a flip and do another dash. Like, it's a very simple item to use. I think it's much easier than Shockwaves are, and for a lot of people that's going to be, you know, a nice change, because Shockwaves do have a decent learning curve to using the item. So, you know, in recap, I think the Turtle Mythics are the best mobility in the game right now for most players. There's definitely some advantages of Shockwaves, but I think most people are going to prefer the Turtle Mythics for sure. And then also I posted a video yesterday kind of just talking about the update, and I said that these items were basically the same as far as mobility goes, and somebody commented on the video and said I was wrong, and that there's differences between the use animation of these Turtle Mythics. So I went into a game and I got clips of me using all of them, and I basically clipped these frames, these clips. The frame before my character's arm started moving, I cut all of them to that point and then synced them up. And there is minor differences here. I'll have the clips playing on screen now. And based on this footage, it seems like the katana is the best, and then the nunchucks, and then the staff, and then the size are the worst. However, I think the period of time is so minuscule, like it's such a small difference, that I think it's possibly that it's just like an error on my end as far as like me trimming it improperly or something, because it is milliseconds of difference. I don't think it's the biggest deal. It's not like one is vastly like faster than the others, and then one is like vastly slower than the others. There's minor differences, and like I said, I think it could have been just on my end in terms of how I trimmed the clips because it is such an incredibly small difference. So this wouldn't really affect my opinion too much one way or the other. If I have the size, I'm not going to like go super far out of my way to get the katanas. I feel like they all work basically the same way, and it's not really something I think about when using the items. And then as far as distance goes, they all seem to go the same distance. I'll have some clips playing on screen now. Basically, I just marked something on the map, put the center of the crosshair on that mark, and then stood in the same spot on the train track, and then did a dash with each of them, and they all seem to end up in basically the same spot. Again, there might be some minor differences in terms of where I landed, but that's probably, just error in terms of how I tested it, because the differences I don't think were too large one way or the other with the use animations or the distance traveled that I did. So I think when I use these items, I don't really care which one I have. If you're using the melee aspect of them, that's something that may actually matter because they do have different melee attacks and animations, I think. But this video, I was just focusing mainly on the mobility aspect because that's how I use the item. But that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting. As always, if you did, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.